And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to check out a game that hasn't been on my radar, but should be on yours, and that is The Capitals. Now this is a game from Mercury Games from anywhere between 2 and 5 players, or for anywhere between 2 and 5 players, and in this game you are going to be essentially running your own city. You're going to start with a small city, you're going to try and build it up, attract population, attract tourism, attract workers, and try and make money and manage everything else. Of course, the end point being to score victory points by having the best city. Now, real quick, why don't we just go into how the game plays and what comes in that box, and then at the end I'll come back here and give you my opinion of what I already kind of gave away is a pretty good game. So here you can see the components for the Capitals laid out for a 5-player game. In this game, you're going to be trying to build a city, and you're going to be doing that by building buildings into your already existing city, and you're trying to attract culture and business. You're going to try and attract workers to work for your population, and you're going to try and manage your public works. And all of these are represented by different tracks that are out on the table. So here we have a population track, and everybody starts with some population. And that population, of course, needs to work. And right next to that, you have the workers track. The workers track never being able to go higher than your population. But keeping the two equal is important for not losing victory points, and eventually, when you get higher, gaining victory points. You're going to have a kind of an industry section here, which is going to manage, moving up, this is going to manage how much power you get, and power is going to be how you operate your buildings, which will be how you get more money or trade in for various increases on the tracks and various other things. You have what is called the culture track here, and culture is going to be a way of attracting tourists to your area. Now in this game, tourists come in the form of other players' pieces, which you can use on your own area, stealing them from them so that they can't use them. In addition, you have public works up here. Every city needs good public works, and being higher on the public works will advance your industry, while being lower on public works will lose you money. And eventually, being high on the public works will earn you points for every other player that you're above. In addition, you'll see over here we have kind of a economy track, which is going to be how much money each player starts with, or how much money each player has throughout the game. And then we have an initiative track up here. And the players, based on where they start on this initiative track at the start of the game, have different amounts of money, having to pay for those at the start of the game, paying 3, 3, 2, 2, and 1 for purple, green, blue, black, and red, respectively. Now, the way you're going to accomplish moving up on all of these tracks and earning victory points is going to be by building buildings and activating those buildings in your own area. We'll see that this player here has 2 buildings in their own area, and that there are buildings available for them to purchase from the board over here during the game. These buildings they have are a hotel and a city hall, and the hotel here is a tourism building, which is going to basically allow you to use culture points in order to get money. So if you already have some culture on the culture track, you don't at the start of the game, but if you did, you could put cubes on here, and you'll see up at the top it shows 1 cube. That means you must place 2 cubes on here to activate it. But you could place 2 cubes, trade in 1 culture, and get $7. Just know that this is how buildings are generally going to work. You also have a public works that you may place 2 cubes on, trade in 1 culture, and get a worker. So if you have a lot of population, but not enough workers, you could activate that building. And it's always going to cost you 1 more cube than the number of cubes that are already on there in order to activate a building. The buildings in your city are built around these crossroads. You'll see each player will have 2 of these crossroads that starts in between their 2 buildings. Each time you build a new building, you have to build on these crossroads or suffer a 2 victory point penalty. In addition, you must build your building next to the same type of building, unless it's the first building of that type, in order to not lose 2 victory points. So there are 2 building rules, both of which can be broken, but it'll cost you points to do so. In addition to their city buildings, each player has a power plant, and this power plant comes with 4 cubes. In addition to that, it's going to tell you how many actions you can take during the action-taking phase. In this case, it says you can take 1 action by activating 1 building, and you'll use those cubes to do so, as I showed you previously, if you wanted to activate either of these buildings, placing 2 cubes on it and taking the appropriate action. A game of Capitals is going to be played over 12 rounds, as indicated by this round marker here, and each round is going to be played over several phases, up to 6, but sometimes less. Now, the initiative phase is the first phase in every round, and when you do the initiative phase, each player is going to essentially be bidding or buying an initiative spot. You start the game on your appropriate initiative spots, losing some money and paying for it at the start of the turn, but subsequent initiatives will be paid for in this manner. So, you'll see here each of these has a multiplier below it, 6, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then a times 2 at the end. When you bid on these, you're essentially going to be paying that multiplier times the amount of money for that space. So, for example, I could bid $6, 6 times $3 to take this second place position here, costing me $18, which would be paid for with my economy track over here. Now, if you ever can't afford this, you actually can lose 1 victory point to get $3. So there's a lot of ways to lose victory points in this game, and especially to pay for things. Likewise, if I wanted to move all the way down here, I could pay $6 to go essentially next to the last spot. So you can kind of move up or down depending on where you want to be or how much money you currently have to spend. But you're going to do this, you're going to, in turn order, choose which place to buy, and then that will affect your income for the next turn. After income, you're going to move on to the building phase, which is phase 2 right here. And there's a whole list of how the phases go. But you'll move on to phase 2, which is going to be buying buildings. And all of these buildings out here are available at the start of the game. You can see we have green buildings, blue buildings, yellow buildings, brown buildings, and red buildings. And there's also going to be some purple buildings you can get throughout the game, which will be end game victory point scores. But these buildings are all going to be of different types. For example, we have a green residential building. And residentials are going to oftentimes give you population when you place them into your area. This one will also give you 1 of the gears, and it'll move you down 2 on the public works track. Then you can activate it to go up 2 on the culture. So anytime you buy one of these tiles, you're going to pay the listed cost, which is 0, and then you're going to place it into your area according to the rules I told you earlier. You'll then get the immediate effects on this side of the tile, moving you on these tracks, and you can use it later to activate those abilities. Other ones, like the public works I already showed you, will give you oftentimes some of the public works stuff, and they'll give you some gears for your industry. Or the industry tiles will, of course, give you industry. Sometimes they will bring in population, and they will give you some workers sometimes. And then you can activate them to get more workers. But each of these buildings will have different effects. Now, some won't have effects that are necessarily activated. This one here has an effect that's active all the time, which says that when you activate a tile that's next to it, you automatically get $2. So there's a lot of abilities to try and look for and try and plan for in your city. Placing some buildings next to other buildings is going to be good. For example, some residential buildings want to be next to other residential buildings, and doing so will give you more money or more people or whatever the case may be. So it's important to plan when you're buying buildings what your strategy is going to be for your layout and how you can best use them to activate one another in order to get benefits. So every turn, in turn order, each player is going to pick up one of these buildings, be it one of the free ones, or later as these get older and older, they'll slide down and become more and more valuable. They'll cost more and more money. After these ones are done, in the next turn they'll be cost 2, and in the next turn they'll cost 4, whatever ones are left. After you've done that, each player will buy one and place it in their area, activating or moving up whatever, tracks that are supposed to move up, activating any abilities that placing it causes it to activate. You'll move on to the tourism phase. Now, the tourism phase is going to be based solely on this culture track. Essentially, whoever's the furthest along in the culture track, let's say that the situation was something like this, green is furthest along in the culture track. What would happen is that green would take the tourism marker, which is going to be this little car, from whoever the lowest player is, in this case red. So green is going to get red's tourism marker. And I'll show you what this means later, but let's switch it around for right now and say that purple is going to get red's tourism marker. And they'll have that until the situation changes and red is no longer last. Maybe blue becomes last later. Then the situation will change and blue will lose their marker to whoever's first. But essentially, whoever's highest is going to take from whoever's lowest. If, for example, purple were all the way up here, they would take all of the tourism markers from every player who's still in the green area, which in this case would be everyone. And furthermore, if they got up to here, they'd take all of the tourism markers from whoever was in the green and orange areas. And likewise up here, blue, green, and orange. So if you get far enough ahead, you can end up stealing tourism markers from several different players, and you can use them in your own area, as I'll show you in a moment. After the tourism phase, you move on to what's called the executive phase. And the executive phase is actually when you're going to use these markers out here in order to get more stuff. So you're going to be using them to activate your buildings that are in your area in order to affect these tracks somehow or get more money or whatever the case may be. So, for example, this player here could activate theirs in order to lose 2 of their culture. So let's say purple activates that to lose 2 culture. But they gain 1 of the public works. So they would move up 1 on the public works track. Let's say, for example, they moved up on the industry track here. And if they got around to this little marker here that shows a new power plant, let's say they moved up 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, green moves up 4 times, they're going to get a new power plant. And that's going to come from this stack over here. When we look through this stack, we'll see that the power plants, level 2 power plants, come in different varieties. This one comes with 5 new cubes, which is going to give you more activation cubes to use on your executive phase. The next one in the pile, the same level 2 for the next person, only comes with 4. And then you get into later ones, level 3s, this one comes with 7. Or some of the late game ones will even come with victory points when you do so. So you'll see that there's going to be victory points here that you can get from getting to the factories earlier. And whoever gets there earlier will get more victory points. So moving around this track down here is going to be important for picking up more cubes to use in your activations in order to kind of score more points. In addition, the later power plants are going to give you more activations. So usually you can only activate one thing during your executive phase using these cubes, but later on in the game, you'll be able to activate 2. You'll see there's 2 actions on this factory. So moving up in factories will give you more actions in order to perpetuate the scoring of more victory points and the moving up or down on various tracks. In addition to that, whoever has the highest tourism, the culture track, whoever's highest on the culture track and steals the marker from another player, also gets a bonus activation. So that person, for being the highest on this track, is going to get extra benefits. And that's a key area to this game, is paying attention to this track and making sure you have enough activations for the buildings in your area, and of course, trying to score points. But basically, everybody in turn order is going to take their activations with their cubes that they have left over. Now, these markers here are also for use in this phase, and basically they count as action cubes that can be moved every turn. So if instead of using my 2 cubes to activate this tile like I showed you, I wanted to place my 2 cars on there, my own car and the one from red player, I would be able to do so, and that would activate that building. Later on my next turn, I could actually shift them somewhere else. So later, if I wanted to trade in a culture for $7, I could shift them like this. And if I had 2 activations, I could then use 2 cubes to activate that building. So you'll see that using these markers, stealing them from other players, is going to be beneficial to your gameplay style. After you've moved through the executive phase, each player taking their actions, you're going to move on to the administrative phase, which is basically the cleanup for the board. Each of these remaining buildings, we'll say that 5 have been bought, is going to slide down to the level 2. Then you're going to reveal buildings that equals 2 times the number of players plus 2. So we'd reveal a bunch of buildings here. We have 10 players. So we're going to have to reveal a whole bunch of these tiles out here available to be bought. And you'll see that new tiles will come out, and you'll have to pay attention to them very closely and to which ones you're going to buy to add to your city. In addition to that, you're going to advance this round marker 1 space, and you're going to do several other upkeep things that I'm not going to go over. But at certain phases, after round 3, you're going to go into what's called a prosperity phase, which is basically the end part of the administrative phase or the start part of the next turn. And each player at the start of the game will be dealt some of these purple tiles, which they can kind of plan for to play out into their area. And a lot of them give you in-game benefits, and some of them give you end-game victory points. So for example, this one here says that you can only build this if you build residential houses in your area that are of level small or medium size. That's what this little iconography on the side means. And you can only do this if you have the most of them. When you build this, you have to build it according to all of the same rules, but when you do so, you're going to get some victory points for building it. If you build it in Era 1, you'll get 1, in Era 2, you'll get 3, and in Era 3, you'll get 6. Additionally, for the rest of the game, anytime you activate a tile next to it, you'll get $6. Another one of these tiles might look like this. You have to have the maximum or the most number of workers, so more workers than anybody else at this point, and you build it, and at the end of the game, for every $6 you have, you'll get 1 victory point. So you'll see that these vary, and a lot of them provide points or endgame points, and you kind of have to pay attention to special building requirements in order to get them out onto the board, but they have many benefits. If you can't build one, you can always put it out into your area as a lake, not having to follow the building requirements, and you'll get 2 energy cubes for doing so. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a consolation prize. At the end of phases 4, 8, and 12, there are scorings. And what you're going to score is many different things, and they're all printed out on here for your benefit. So it's called a World Expo. And at the World Expos, you're going to score employment. So the first thing you'll look at and see is how much employment do you have. And based on this, you'll see you can lose up to 12 victory points, but you can gain up to 24. However, your employment can never be higher than your population. So first, you have to make sure that your population is high, and then second, make sure that those people are employed. After that, you're going to lose points based on the difference between your population. Let's say the green has a population of 15, and your employment, which is a population or a employment of 7. So they gain 7 victory points for employment, but then they're going to lose 2 because the difference between this cube and this cube is 2 spots. If it were 1, they'd lose 1, and if it were 3 or more, they'd lose 3. So having unemployment will lose you a maximum of 3 points. You're also going to score for the public services, and on this public service track, you'll see that there are various things printed. You can lose $3, you can lose $1, you can gain a cube, or you can gain up to 6 gears on this track. In addition to that, you're going to lose 2 victory points for every person that's behind you on the track. So this is another way to lose points in the game. Finally, you're going to clean up and you're going to remove everything from these tracks. You'll remove all of the cubes from your used buildings and you'll get ready to start a next round. Moving on to phase 5, which is era 2. And we'll get you more points for building some of these purple buildings. So with all of that, you're going to try and score the most victory points, noting that there are benefits and detriments to moving towards the very end, the high end for benefits, and the low end for detriments of every track on this board. So if you are exceedingly good or exceedingly bad in something, it will have an effect on your gameplay. But through all of that, through the building of buildings, the management of your money, the moving up and down on all of these tracks, and the stealing of people from other people using tourism, you're going to try and score the most points, and whoever best manages all of these things over the course of the game will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is The Capitals from Mercury Games. I said at the beginning it was a pretty good game, and that was a little bit of an understatement. I would actually say that this is a great game. It gives you that feeling of city building and actually makes you feel like you're trying to manage all of the different aspects of running and building a city. Do I want to get this type of building in order to bring in more population, or do I want to try and get some industry to bring in workers? Do I want to get the tourism so that I'm able to steal the tourists from other people's areas in order to use them in my own, in order to try and benefit things a little bit more? It's all about what you want to do, and you can go one direction or the other, and I think they're all viable for getting victory points. The board is a little confusing at first, and you saw there's a lot of tracks on the board, there's a lot of iconography, but as you go on, you'll actually see that each of those tracks serves their purpose pretty well. They're kind of associated with each other on the board, so you'll figure out how they work, and the iconography, although there's a lot of it, is really very straightforward once you get down to it. So it's not that hard to learn the game and remember what everything does. In the game, you're going to feel for the first couple times you play and the first couple rounds you play in each game that you're simply losing points. You're going into the negative because you need to take loans to manage your economy, or you're too low on a track and you lose some victory points, or buildings force you to spend some money and you lose victory points that way. You're going to end up in the negatives, sometimes negative 15, 20 points. But it all turns around, and by the end of the game, you're surprised at how many points you actually manage to pull out with. And I think that's kind of a cool aspect to the game. Is it's such a swing game that you end up so negative and everybody's negative, and then all of a sudden things click and you're back into the positives, and it's kind of surprising who manages to come out with the most positive points. So with all of that said, I really enjoy this game. It's one of my favorite city building games, one I definitely suggest you check out. That's The Capitals from Mercury Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.